Rookie defenseman, Adrian Kempe over the line. Kopitar to Jersey. Oh, he wins it! Oh, what a setup for the game winner!
All right. Another episode from HockeyRoyalty.com, official podcast of Hockey Royalty Network. Except for we're making it rain today, boys. As always, my co-host, Joe Paterino. How you doing?
Very good, Randon. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic because we got the man right below us here on the screen, Jacob Stoller, coming in to talk some analytics, hockey, some rain, some of the best guys. Let's talk some puck. How are you doing, Jacob?
Good. How about you guys?
Awesome. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Of course. Anytime.
I'm doing fantastic. I can't wait. These player cards. So let's give the fans a little bit of a rewind here. You just kind of reached out to a couple of us and started giving us these player cards. Joseph and I eat up player cards like fresh spaghetti, and we love all the analytics stuff. It's fantastic. So we appreciate for that. And that's why we wanted you to bring you on. So, before we get into the player cards and kind of what that is and all that kind of stuff like that, let's talk about your hockey beginnings. How did you get into the sport? How did you get into the analytics of the sport? And then where has that brought you into where you are now?
Before I get to that, I will say I'm glad you guys ate the cards up. They weren't intended to be edible, but I'm glad they tasted well. I haven't been told they were tasted like spaghetti yet, but I'll take that as a compliment. So thank you, Brandon. So honestly, full disclosure, almost failed grade 10 math. Like the worst math person ever. Like I'd say a year ago, I was pretty bad at math. And then I'd say it was during before obviously hung on to writing. So I'll back up as you asked. I got into writing at the age of 14. In Winnipeg, Jets are kind of the thing here. I was a big Moose fan growing up before the Jets came back. Was always kind of a good creative writer. And I just kind of, at one point I remember writing some blogs or whatnot, and then I published them. Grammar was atrocious. But I kind of worked at it for a year or so. And then, before you know it, I reached out to Arctic Ice Hockey, which is the SB Nation Winnipeg vertical. And a guy named Tim Bonner was nice enough to give me a shot there. That's kind of where I've watched a lot of podcasts where writers talk about their beginnings. And I feel like a lot of them honestly kind of started in a similar fashion where an SB Nation or a fan sided or somewhere like that, gives you a shot, to have a bigger platform. So that was pretty big for me. But the first year or two, I was writing under an alias called Official Jet Fuel. I don't know why. And I don't know, it's not that uncommon. I guess there's a bunch of people that do them. But then I kind of made the big reveal and was yeah, it's my name. And then you're this guy's 16 years old. Holy, oh my God. And yeah, I was really, I'm 22 now. So yeah, I did that for a bit in high school, realized I wanted to do this. And then it kind of went really fast for me. So grade 11, I moved from Arctic Ice Hockey to Jets Nation, the Nation Network, which is now with Daily Faceoff. And now it's not, especially what it was 5 years ago. It's crazy. And yeah, I got a DM from, I think it was Thomas Durant's or either Durant's directly or it was Garrett Hull. And just kind of being hey, Garrett's leaving. I think it was Durant's or whatever. And we need a managing editor. You're next in line. I'm what?
Out of the blue.
And I was wow, I'm there. No, there's no one else contributing really full time. So by proxy, oh God, okay. I was this is I was oh my God.
So here's fire. Just jump into it, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I remember it was so funny because I just remember at one point someone else there and they were really good to me, the network. I worked at them for a couple of years. I have nothing but good things to say. Have a lot of friends still work there. But I remember someone was yeah, you're really raw and green, but we like that. I was are you sure? I'm in grade 11 biology, just typing away articles about Toby Enstrom. I could get my laptop taken away for discipline if I do this too much. But yeah, so I became managing editor, which was honestly hilarious. You think about it. And I'll get into this sure throughout. But anyways, and then I was working at Jets Nation. And like honestly, I think I did a pretty decent job, all things considered. I always have and will, for the most part. I would say like I pretty professional online. Yeah, like I've got in trouble for maybe like wrong time and place, stupid jokes, but like I'm pretty cool and collected. And yeah, so basically the way I said was like I'll do it, and I did it, but I wanted to get access to like either the Moose or the Jets. Obviously, the Jets wasn't going to happen, so like I really want to like cover the Moose. They're like, yeah, like we'll do that. So you reach out, the email, the PR people, and they remember being in class. I'll never forget this, and seeing an email being like, yeah, sounds good. We've checked it all out. Like, just let me know what game you want to go to, and like we'll like bring something. I was like, oh my god, like this is actually happening. And like I guess imposter syndrome would be the wrong word, but like I was like 17, so like I was in high school. Like there was like part of me that was like, there's no way they know how old I am, and that was true actually. They thought I was a lot older, and they were pleasantly surprised when I walked in, and they're like, "This kid has not hit puberty," but which like I basically hadn't. And so I walked in like pug eye, whatever, and it was like really cool experience. There was like, and that was like pretty big reminder that like I was professional. I had to like distance myself from being a fan. And at that time, I also then applied to Ryerson School of Journalism in Toronto. Got in, went there, where I've been since COVID and like a year off, so like in my last year, but like been there ever since. And when I moved to Toronto, I started covering the Marlies, and I was there for the Calder Cup year. And and then I worked at McKeen's Hockey the same time too. So, and then back here in Manitoba. So to answer the question, my started out kind of the Jets blogger, became a Moose guy. Then when I went to Toronto, really started focusing on the AHL. And since 2017, I've been doing AHL as a whole. When I was in Toronto and now, I focus on like the Moose and the Marlies, the beat guy kind of primarily. But as you see with the player cards and other articles I'll do every so often, I like to write about the league as a whole. And I wouldn't say I'm like a master scout or anything. Like I'm not like like one of the best, I think, Scott Wheeler. I'm not going to give you like the nuances and stuff as good as he is. Like he's excellent. Chris Pierce is super good too. But I like to think that with watching it, looking at stats and like just general knowledge, all I can give kind of a balanced salad, if you say, of all of them, kind of in there. So yeah. That's who I am, kind of.
Well, good. I mean, it all came from me. I answered a thing on Twitter saying, "Hey, does anybody want to cover the rain?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And
there you go.
That's how. And then Joe and I did our introductory episode, and I found out I got the job while having a few beers out by the pool. So it all worked out for the best.
That's awesome. That's great.
So let's get into kind of like what with the player cards, and that's really what got us involved, and you and I talking, or us three talking. How did that come about? What is your fascination with advanced stats, and where do you kind of pick that apart?
So yeah, as I started off with prematurely, I was not a big math guy, and also I will admit, when I was at the Nation Network originally, like the Leafs Nation, like when I moved there as a Marlies beat guy, I kind of was like, I was at journalism, so I was like kind of like getting into like the storytelling, which like I'm still big on, like I'm a journalist, and like the like technical aspect, but all along that was kind of like the start or the peak of like the hockey analytics Twitter movement, and I had no part in it. Like not like in it like I ever would, but I meant like I wasn't interested. I wasn't really like involved in that way. And I was a pretty meat and potatoes basic stats guy. Then as like my career progressed, I started working at McKeen's, and it was a matter of like I was telling stories and I was talking to like coaches and like bringing like a cool view. I realized like honestly like there's a lot missing here, and what I meant by that is like there's not much stats available to begin with. AHL.com doesn't have much. Even if you go to like the media guide stats that are more quote unquote advanced, it's kind of just like super like not tedious, but just like really detailed, and I don't think there's much substance to it. So I kind of always felt that. I always felt like there was part of my analysis that was like kind of lacking, for lack of a better, like there wasn't filled out. And I always felt that, and obviously like maybe part of it was like a lack of confidence that like what I was saying made sense or whatever, and I always kind of felt it. Then COVID hits, And like a lot of people had a lot of downtime. And I was like, I really am not good at writing. I didn't write for a while, to be fully honest. I went on podcasts, like I did write every couple of times, but and I was like, I just like really felt like, I don't know, I felt like really it was hard because like there wasn't much AHL hockey. It was hard to like think of stories and whatnot. So then I kind of was thinking like, okay, what would be a cool idea to sort of, and this is when I say COVID, like this is like the COVID AHL season. So the beginning of 2021, and like during that year, doing the Moose and stuff, it was like a challenging year for like so many reasons. Like, you know, there's no playoffs you're playing for. The quality of competition was a lot lower. There's like so many things, making it hard to write stories and whatnot. So I was like kind of thinking as the season ended up, and I was like, it's kind of started with like Cole Perfetti, and I was like, okay, he's doing really well, but like he's like his numbers are really good. Like at a certain point of the season, they ended up being really well. But I was like, but like he's not like his shots aren't great. His like goals like don't like jump off the page, but like he's getting like a lot of chances, like all these things. Like I see it, but like I can't just like. And again, pet peeve of mine. I hate when you read something that's like not substantive. So just an opinion not backed up. So I was kind of like, oh, like maybe stats would kind of balance it out. Look into it, and there's really not much available. And so I was like, okay, so my it's the first time I've ever said this publicly. But the original plan I had was a couple of my friends and I, and like I will say the player cards are this is the first version of them. I have a lot of plans to advance them and make them better and more accessible to people. And maybe in another project that wouldn't really be public. But the point being, like, my original plan was myself and a couple of people are interested. We're going to track like every game. I had this idea to like track all the shot attempts and then kind of do it from there. And like we did talk to some like companies that like you could do it through the iPad and stuff, but like it just got to the point like this is so absurd. Like this is like actually bonkers. And like I don't even know what, like, it would have been such a mess. So then I kind of look into like different companies and like had meetings with like all these different ones. I settled on Instat, and a scout told me about how he like is addicted to it because like you can pull videos up, and like I love Instat. I love the platform. Like it's really cool. And I have to say it's probably the best investment I've ever made for my career. Not even just the data part, but the video as well. And then so the goal, right, was like kind of like have these stats, right? And then it was like I got them. So then I was kind of like, okay, so you know, like I guess Perfetti was kind of like the symbol of it. I was like, oh, let's see what his scoring chances were, or like whatever it was. And I saw, I was like, oh, it's 2.3 or whatever it was, and I was like, is that good? I was like, yeah, like that's 2 point. I don't know. Like I was like, now I'm like, I have so many more questions. Like it's like he's a 51% course.
Go down a rabbit hole.
So,
yeah.
So how did that advance? How did that advance to now? Like fast forwarding to where you're at now, like what does your appreciation come from these advanced stats?
Where it came from was I think that when I started digging there, I was like, wait a second. So I downloaded all the ones into one Excel file. I saw that was in whatever percent, it was whatever percentile, which is where my cards are. So I saw that he was better than 97% of the players. I was like, that's what it is. Like that's what I was seeing the whole time. It was that like the level of shot generation, of chance generation was not in the 97th quantile or percentile, whatever it is. And Jay Fresh's cards came out at the same kind of time or whatever 2 years ago. And that's kind of where the project started. I was like, okay, wait a second. What if I made this sort of like catalog of every player that like when someone gets traded or when I want to write an article, like I put it into this article, I wrote an EC mod. I thought it was really good. I was like super pumped about that. If I have a card to rely on. And that's where this came from. Now, for anyone that's like kind of wondering, in terms of like the metrics, like Corsi, expected goals, and goals for, those are like the raw total. So it's like their goals for percentage is 96% better than everyone. Obviously, there's a bit of like, so by that I mean it's like, okay, like so if you're in the 100th percentile, it's 100% Corsi. Maybe it's like 60, 65. It's better than 100% of the people. So there are some confusions there, but I like to add context whenever I tweet them out. And I think, the idea kind of stemmed from just like, you know, having this sort of database and catalog that I could have and say, watch someone I like and whatever, I can, with the Instat clips and watching it, I can just pull this up and, you know, kind of rely on it. So
I can appreciate where you're coming from because every article I write for Hockey Royalty, I have my creative writing teacher, professor in college saying, "Don't tell me, show me." So when you say like, you're trying to, there's an opinion, but you need something to back it up with, right?
Totally.
So and that's I find myself in the same position where I'm trying to dig up any sort of video I can find on YouTube or wherever I can find it, some sort of clip somewhere or something, or some sort of statistic that I didn't know was there. So that's why, as somebody who's mainly doing a lot of AHL stuff, I when I saw the player cards that you were coming out, I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly the type of stuff that we're looking for, right? Because that's what you're looking to add context to whatever it is that you're trying to write. If in talking about the Reign, if early in the season we talked a lot about Tyler Madden. In the visual, it looked like Tyler Madden was getting a ton of scoring chances. He was playing very well. Some of the pucks weren't falling; they weren't going in the net at the time, but he was playing very well. He was impactful. It seemed to the eye, but it's tough to back that up with the limited data that's available. So, that's why somebody like me has an appreciation for the work that somebody like you is doing. That's for sure.
No, for sure. I fully understand that.
So before we get into the Reign players, we do got a little commercial break from our friends at DraftKings. And so the NHL season has been packed with dirty dangles, hat tricks, and big wins. As the action rolls on, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL, has your shot to win big too. New customers can bet $1 on any team and win $150 in free bets if they win. That's right. A bump in the win column for your team means free bets for you. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state, you still have a shot to light the lamp. Everybody can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Hockey Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. That is THPN. Bet just $1 on any NHL team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. 21 years of age, restrictions apply. See show notes for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be assessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537 in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Wyoming. That's 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, New Hampshire, 888-789-777. Visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 877-770-STOP in Louisiana, 877-H467369 in New York. Visit opgr.org in Oregon. Call or text Tennessee Redline at 800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or 888-532-3500 in Virginia. 21 years of age, 18 or older in New Hampshire and Wyoming, physically present to claim in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, Wyoming, and West Virginia. Only minimum $5 a deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See http DraftKings.com sportsbook for details. And that is a mouthful from our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Joe, let's get into the Reign's players here.
Yeah, well done as always, Brandon. Well done with the ad read. So, Jacob, I'd like to, as Brandon just said, about talking about some of the Reign players. So, Gabe Vilardi is a player that he was kind of thrust into a 2C role in Los Angeles a couple of years ago, perhaps a little bit prematurely. So he started the season in LA, gets sent down to Ontario, and to the eye test and to some of his raw points at nearly a point per game, he looked impressive. He moved to the wing, drafted as a center. How do some of the statistics that you look at and have put into the player cards, how does Gabe Vilardi look to you, to Jacob Stoller?
Well, just in terms of like the stats and like the overall picture of Gabe Vilardi, I think that a lot of people, and I don't know if like I obviously like I like to follow along with this, but I don't know what the narratives are around Los Angeles. But I'm not sure. Like maybe you guys can answer this. Do people expect him to be like a big hulking power forward? Was that ever a thing?
I don't think it was ever a thing that he was a power forward. No, I think that he's viewed. and Brandon, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I would say he's viewed as a guy that's a high skill player that
100%.
is meant to put points on the board. I don't know that I can ever think of that there was an idea that he'd be a power forward.
My point was more so that like he's 6'3" or whatever it is, right? He's a big guy, and I think that maybe my default myself was that was going to be. But I think that with Vilardi, like just his vision is really reflected. So like he's the 90th percentile this year, but a primary assists at 5-on-5. He's a great power play player as well, which I'm sure anyone can really garner from anything. But the main thing with him is he doesn't really get a lot of shots on net. To the amount maybe you would think, he generates like an average amount of chances. You're at the 50th percentile. Now, shots on goal as a whole, like the 13th percentile, which is pretty low. But again, as I said, he's a great distributor. And that's kind of the thing there. And just in terms of like what his upside could be, I think that a lot of the similarities I see is like, I think he'll be able to, with his big frame, draw a lot of penalties. I think that not just that, but being a right shot and having that ability to protect the puck and pass, I think he's a guy that he'll like attract a lot of attention at the next level. You've seen it now in a lot of Ontario's games. Like, not only are they a good team, but like in addition to how good his teammates are, his ability to attract attention and whatnot, and then make passes, either he draws a penalty or he makes a play and there's an odd man rush. And like that sort of ability he has, in my opinion, is a testament to what he can be at the next level. And I think that like a lot of the time with guys like Vilardi, where first of all, he's like one of the most unique development paths ever, right? Like there was the injury, like or injuries, whatever you have for the year. Yeah. Then last year he's like an NHLer, and then this year he's not. So it's kind of like in terms of like evaluating that to other people, like for example, Byron Bayer's model, which is awesome, like for what it is. Like his would be more macro, mine would be and like very macro, like historically, mine's micro. You look at it, and his, for example, he got an 80th% of being an NHLer, which is by his definition, right? And then to be a star, he's still at like a 47%, which is like a coin flip to be so. And that a star by Byron's model is 0.7 point per game player over 200 games. And I gave Vilardi, and I think, well, okay, he's already at 75 games, first off, to be honest. But the question I wonder is, like, can he be that if he can't get the puck on net as much, right? Because then you get to be an elite distributor. So that's kind of where I think, like, that's where his kind of, I wonder if the next step for him is to be able to get more shots on net, be it by volume, like improving his volume, or just something to do with his finishing. But like, he has a great ability to attract defenders to him and to distribute via that. But in terms of his outlook, I don't know. I think there's another layer there to be kind of added. That's what I would say with him. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's well said, because he struggled as a center in the NHL driving play. So the move to Ontario to the wing, but at his heart, he's still a playmaker, right? He's not that shooting winger that you see from, again, just in rain terms, from like a Samuel Fagemo, who's a shooting winger, where Vilardi is still that playmaker. He's still that creative player in the offensive zone. He's not going to be that winger that beats you on the rush, but he can be very effective on the power play. So I am curious to see how this kind of next phase develops. I mean, from a purely point production standpoint, he was great in Ontario. He was lethal on the power play. Helps to have TJ and Tyne in there too, but still, he was very, very good. And I would say he's looked a lot better. And I think some of the data backs it up too, in this brief stint since he's been back up with the Kings, and he's playing with Byfield as his center. So I think the move to the wing is going to be a positive for him, but generally speaking, your wingers are your shooters, right? Right. So I'd be curious to see if he's able to adapt to that, or if he's going to still be kind of that playmaking winger, which again is not necessarily common.
I think with the fact that he is getting drug into the play, you look at the players he's playing with right now with Rasmus Kupari and Byfield, who are the types of guy that can drive play with their skates, and Vilardi really isn't that type of guy. He's using his hockey intelligence to be where he needs to be on the ice. And so where he's going to score goals is because of his intelligence. He's going to be in the soft spots in the defense, and he has a good shot. He just doesn't use it a lot to where his intelligence is going to bring him points rather than the like a Victor Arvidsson, who will shoot it from the bench if you ask him to. And so, I think it's just going to be a different type of goal scoring needed. And then when you have guys like Kupari and Byfield who can also shoot, you have that amoeba of where everybody else is on the ice. And I think his intelligence fits that line in particular, and why it fit in Ontario with a shooter like Furk on the power play.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't think he needs to be a goal scorer per se. I think that the big thing for him would just be the confidence to shoot when like it's the time to shoot. Like, that's what all I would say would be in terms of like his low shot on goal totals. The one thing to me it would say is like, okay, he's a little hesitant with like getting shots off, and because like his volume of shot attempts too would align with this, because it's not a matter of him just like missing the net 1,000 times. Like I think he just is a bit hesitant. So what I would say is, if anything, you would ask for just a higher volume so that he gets in that rhythm of doing it. But I agree with what you said there. Like, this is a really stupid comparison, and like I don't want anyone to read into this, but like Blake Wheeler as a winger, as a passer in his prime, like the way he used his big body reminds me of that. Because with Velarde, like just that ability to like shield, be a right shot passer, winger, it's pretty rare, right? And like be able to distribute like that, and Velarde can do that. I wish I had this advanced data league-wide over the last 3 years, as my cards do, but I'd love to know how many passes to the slot Velarde gets at the AHL level, because I think it's probably the best. Like, I don't want to say, like, I think it's in like the 80th percent plus, because I think he's like that good in tight. I'm sure we have the NHL numbers for whatever it is, but yeah, I think he's a magnificent passer to the point that, like, we all know he's an NHL player, but I think there's also a lot more there. Like, he could be a top-end contributor.
Yeah, and that's what I've thought too. And as we're talking through this, who a player that it's not apples to apples, but he was a center by trade, moved to the wing in Buffalo, and he's playing the wing now in Florida, is Sam Reinhart, who is a great playmaker, great passer on the power play, but a very underrated shot. So just that's an interesting take. And again, I think very interested to see where he goes here in the next step in his development. The next player, Jacob, just hot button topic here in LA land, Alex Turcotte.
Yeah.
Everybody's, we had Scott Wheeler on months back, and I said, everybody seems to be getting a little antsy. And this was in the fall, Brandon.
He loves Turcotte.
Everybody's been antsy since his name was announced at 5th overall.
Right. So here we sit, Alex Turcotte. From a production standpoint, it's been so at best, I would say, in the AHL. But
I mean, when you compare him to Jonathan Taves, like at the draft, like people considering the Kings and Chicago rivalry, like that's a name that rings true as far as a player that has dominated that type of game. And when you do that, the expectations are super high, especially since he was the highest draft pick for a long time. And I think that the expectation rings true. Sorry, I just had to get that out, Joe. Continue with your point.
No. And he's been a guy that again, kind of eye test is he plays both ends of the ice. He's one of those guys that's going to be a hard worker, in first on the forecheck type of thing, win some battles. It would appear in down low. So curious to see how he kind of grades out, because one player card I have not seen is Alex Turcotte. So I'd be very curious to see or hear about some of how he grades out. And again, another guy that's been dealing with a lot of injuries, really his whole career, dating back to college. So
I'll after this too. I'll tweet all the ones we've discussed. I already tweeted Velarde. It hasn't changed much, so I'll put the Turcotte out. So funny you mentioned Taves there, because I think that's a really interesting thing. So I think that, like with Alex Turcotte, first of all, when I saw that, I don't know if it was, I just saw something online about how Vancouver, remember they're talking with Calgary, with LA about a deal or something, maybe Garland or whoever it was recently. I just saw on Vancouver radio. And I remember, I hope I'm not making this up, but I'm pretty sure someone said that they believe that Turcotte was one of the guys that Vancouver wanted. And what I thought to me was, okay, with Alex Turcotte, like, he's a great defensive player. He's super smart. Like, he's cerebral. Like Velarde, really great distributor. Like, really, like, sneaky skill. Was he worth the 5th overall pick? No. We've realized that. I think he'll be an NHL player. Like, I actually have no doubt of that. In terms of his upside, I think that the current trajectory, there's nothing that's proved to me that he'll ever live up to what Kings fans thought he'd be, and understandably. Because the Taves thing, the problem with that, in my opinion, was you were comparing Turcotte, or is it Turcotte or Turcotte?
Turcotte, as far as we know.
Turcotte, okay. At least I didn't say Turcotte. So with him, because he was good defensively, I almost feel like that Jonathan Taves was an easy example to kind of grab onto. But like you watch him play, and he's not hard to play against. So like he's not someone like he's good defensively. He's very smart. He at college level had some great plays. But would he be someone that I would say is like a menace to play against and sort of like the win a game? No, I wouldn't. And so in terms of where he's at, when I saw the Vancouver thing, I thought, and this goes back to an article Justin Bourne wrote recently that was awesome about how there's a market inefficiency of not trying to acquire other guys' prospects. Like every team values their own prospects so highly about that idea. And I thought for the Kings, sell high when you still can on Turcotte. Like you got to realize, listen, he's going to be an NHL player. But in terms of, you look at their depth chart, you look at the goods that they've amassed, he will not surpass he's been surpassed. And I think what it comes down to is, first of all, I want to give him some credit where it's due. I think he turned pro too early. I think, second of all, I think honestly his point production it's good. I think it's could look even better if you realize that he has a lot of primary points to even strength. And a lot of his production isn't on the power play, right? So that's even more of I think a testament to him. Is it kind of knack is that the game breaking ability? Maybe. But I think the fact that he comes in able to produce a 5-on-5 is a huge advantage. Where I think the line kind of blurs with what he can bring and where the next sort of level is in regards to will he ever be a second line center? And that's even a pretty low bar. So if we're now talking right now, he's a middle six guy usage wise, even strength. So we're in the AHL right now and he's middle six. He's doing good, but is our view skewed? Like what we're looking at here is we're looking at a guy that's shown flashes and good. But if I were to evaluate him, having not been a 5th overall pick, I think my lens would be a lot different. Great player, great passer, but I think will he ever get to where he should be to justify it? No. So with that said, I think that they should look to sell high. And maybe they can't, but that's the idea.
Yep. I'm totally on board with that. And again, as you mentioned, it's not necessarily anything that's against the player specifically, because he is a valuable player. But I think, and we've talked about this on the show, that we're going to have to recalibrate as Kings fans where our expectations lie with Alex Turcotte. And he is no more this. I hate to say that with so definitively, but it doesn't look like he's going to be that top line player or even top 6. And you're talking about much more of a middle 6, maybe a PP2 type of player, guy that can kill penalties, be a really good two-way player, which is a solid NHL player. It's just
he's Alex Iafallo.
Sure.
So I did. I don't know if you know this. I did a little bit of stat checking for top 5 picks, and on average, they play over 830 games in the NHL on average. So if he plays over 830 games at an Alex Iafallo skill level, will the pick have been worth it? And I would say yes, because you got an NHLer that's been there that long, but you're not getting the 2 points per game player that he was drafted as. He scored more points than Jack Hughes the second half of the season for the U.S. development team. And so fans are looking at that. And then when you're the shiny new toy, they're expecting you to produce. And I think he's always going to get paired to Zagreus, who is the dreamboat of offensive production. And he's never going to be able to live up to those comparisons.
Is it worth it if 5th overall he becomes that? My point more so being it's you look at that draft too, and I have to say, as well as the Kings have drafted, I think that you have to look at this as a failure in the sense of, and maybe not on the Kings, but I think that just what he's done is kind of a bust. If what we say continues to ring true, I would say so.
I don't disagree with that. I'm with you. No, I'm with you, and I see where Randon's coming from with that.
So do I.
But where you picked him and the expectations, it's hard to not look at it that way. So I'm totally on board with the idea of if there is a market for him, which I suspect there probably is, that I'd be on board with making a deal that involves Alex Turcotte, which, maybe a year or so ago, that was seeing, and not for nothing, he's out hurt again. He's had a couple of nicks this season. He's currently out. So it's been a tough go for him. I do feel for him because he's had so many injuries that he's had to deal with over the years, but unfortunately it is what it is right now. Another player, another college product I would like to ask you about, because I mentioned him earlier. He was a favorite of mine earlier in the season. I thought he looked really, really good in the HL for Ontario, and that's Tyler Madden. They had him in the bumper role on the power play. He was getting a lot of shooting opportunities from the slot area. They weren't falling. He had some pipes. Pucks weren't going in, and then he had a little bit of some of the puck luck started to get a little bit better, but he's kind of been up and down throughout the season where there's got stretches of games where he looks really impactful. He's another one that's missed some time here. He's been out for a few weeks now. But Tyler Madden, how does he look to you?
I think with Tyler Madden, he's like one of those guys where, and again, like today in preparation, I like to watch like a good amount of AHL games, but just like with the way I'm right with the Moose and stuff, I'd say I watch like every Moose game, something in the division, and then I like to watch players, the shifts. So like that's so with Tyler Madden, obviously I've heard of him. Haven't watched him in college at all, but today in watching him preparation, I have to say the one thing I think about is like he's kind of one of those guys where as a prospect you wonder like, okay, does he do one thing that is exceptionally like good enough to be more than a tweener? Right? Like that's the first like question you would ask, right? And first of all, like no wonder they bumped up the bumper because he can generate chances in an amazing ability at the AHL, like on his own or whatever way. And while he's not like insane power play production by the numbers, Ontario is pretty stacked. It's pretty spread across the board. So, but with Tyler Madden, I wonder if he's like kind of guy where he could sort of like establish himself in a bomb six role of LA, and then a year or two later after getting there, score goals sneaking like, whoa, wait, Tyler Madden has 10 goals? Like, whoa, like, I didn't know that. Beyond that, I don't know. Like, that's kind of my gist of like, I'm going to be fully transparent. Like, I watched like a couple hours of him today, like just on and off. Like, that's kind of my initial view. I'd love to know what you guys think, but production wise, like good goal scorer, chances, but like my eye test wise, like I don't know. He seems like a coin flip to me. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're not. And
like that's what I
because early in the season I was like, you know what, one of the best players in the first maybe a few weeks of the season, Randon. We were talking like Tyler Madden. He looks the part. Like he's not NHL ready, but at this level, he is really he's off to a good start. And then it kind of went quiet for a while. Like, and I'm not even talking about just production. Like, it just seemed like his chances dried up. He wasn't even generating a lot of chances. And then out of nowhere, he'd get hot again and have a stretch where he's involved in the offense. He's getting scoring opportunities. So I don't know what to make of him. I'm skeptical that I'm skeptical of what his NHL future projects to be, frankly.
He's a tweener, if anything.
Right now, I think it's fair to say that maybe he's a tweener at this point, but he shows stretches where he's really impactful. And then there's games where he's, I hate to say non-existent, but I think part of it is, I think he's still physically somebody that's got to get a little bit bigger and stronger and be able to handle some of the physicality and going to different areas of the ice. And again, he's another player that's going to have to, he's played mostly wing on the season, came up as a center. I think he was a center when Vancouver drafted him. So another one that's had to have a bit of a position change, but I'll be interested to see next season because I think he's had a fine season here. Again, he's hurt right now, but as he goes into another year pro, next year, full year pro, what type of numbers we're talking about. But yeah, I'm with you right now. I think you're completely right. It's a bit of a tweener. I don't know, Randon, what you think about Madden.
Yeah. So, I mean, all the guys that we've talked about so far, injury has been a part of their career, and Tyler Madden is no different. He was in line to win the Hubby Baker in college, be the MVP of the NCAA, and he got injured on his finger last year, took a brutal hit, out for most of the season, only played the last couple games. This year has had multiple injuries, but I love his creativity. And I don't really think that there's a player in the prospect pool for the Kings that has the level of creativity that he does or the willingness to expose that. It was very apparent in college that he had that. And I think that the injuries have set him back. And then when you play with guys that are high-level producers like a Byfield or or Ferk or Tynan or whatever, maybe you take a back seat with your skill set, similar to what Adrian Kempe said when he was playing with Jeff Carter. Like, hey, I didn't really play my game. I deferred. And I think as the more he plays, the better he's going to get. And I think he's a top 9 guy in the NHL, whether he could play third line and be the offensive juggernaut, or he could be a complementary piece on the first line if they needed to, not on a routine basis. But I like that. I like his playmaking ability and his creativity, which I don't think the prospect pool has. Now, the percentage of him hitting that, I think, is a lot lower than the prospects that we've talked about already. And so that's where like you said, the tweener or the coin flip aspect comes into play for me as well.
If I may, like, one more thing. When I was in Toronto, like, Jeremy Bracco was a guy where, like, speaking of like Scott Wheeler, he came out and tweeted how Bracco was the second best passer in the entire Leafs organization. And like, Wheeler was right, and everyone ripped him for it. But, like, he was right. But people are missing was, like, with that said, the fact that he skates like a freaking duck and, like, has all these other issues, making, like, I find that the guys like the Tyler Madden stuff that are great college players, they have great skill set, but, like, also here's the thing: 5'11" isn't, like, short as like maybe before, but, like, he's not. He looks undersized. Number one,
he does.
So, and he's like, I don't know what he weighs in at, but, like,
he's a $160 soaking wet at the draft.
Okay, so, like, look at that.
Yeah.
Like, all right, and maybe he's lifted some weight since then, but I don't know. So that's what he's at. Does he have game-breaking speed? No. So there are, like, a lot of guys that fit the profile we've just outlined. Tyler Madden can score, all these things could do. Will he even be like, I want to be clear about what I said before. I think that's what he could be, Tyler Madden, because, like, listen, he's not going to compete. He's creative in little ways. He can play, like, a simpler type of game and be creative. But, like, in terms of not even just, like, himself, but like he's going to be leapfrogged here. Like, you guys have, like, the Kings have an amazing amount of prospects. Like, no matter what Tyler Madden does, he will be leapfrogged. Will he figure it out somewhere else, right? We look at it that lens. Well, by then, how old is he?
Yeah.
Well, he's already done this. So for me, like, he was a 3rd-round pick. His draft value is higher than a 3rd-round pick. So he's already outplayed his draft stock, in my opinion. And so will it continue on that trajectory? Maybe, maybe not. But like you're saying, in what we've been saying from the King standpoint is that, yeah, you have the number 1 prospect pool, now ranked number 2, according to Scott Wheeler, in the NHL. Not everybody's going to make it. Not everybody's going to have a spot on this roster. And so he's going to have to earn that. Does he have a high level skill in his creativity and the way he views the ice? Yes. Does he have detriments being his size, his speed? Sure. But ultimately, sometimes the willingness to do it. I mean, you saw it. I think his name is Gerard in Nashville, undrafted. Yeah, whatever. He has 20 plus goals this year. He just put it together at the biggest stage, and ultimately, that's the player's decision to do that. And draft level doesn't really play into that. And we've seen Matt Roy do that for the last 3 seasons.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. I think next year will be a big year for Madden, and I think what'll be his really second full year as a pro. You tweeted out, Jacob, Jordan Spence's player card not long ago when he got called up. He's been a revelation for the Ontario Reign. Second right shot D to get called up. Sean Dursey was earlier in the season, but and I'll let you touch on either of them if you would like. But there's one that I want to ask you about because I feel like he's getting perhaps a little overlooked right now because of how well Dursey has played and Spence has played. You've got Brant Clark, who was the big draft pick last year, and Brock Faber, who's made some noise with the Olympics. But Helge Grans is putting together a pretty quietly effective season in Ontario. At the time of Spence's call-up, Grans had the same amount of even strength points as Jordan Spence. So, Spence, to his credit, was doing a lot of damage on the power play, which, as I mentioned the other day, he's well-deserved. He's outstanding. But I'd be curious to know your thoughts on Helge Grans in his first year in North America. I think he's had a heck of a season with Ontario.
Yeah, like, where did you guys find this guy? Like, that was another guy today I was watching. I was like, where do you, like, I'm like, I have to say, like, I'm not going to BS. When I saw it in Vancouver, the guy that wants Helge Grans, I go, okay. Like, they're making up names. So that's an NHL be a pro automated thing. Like, I for sure had a Helge Grans on my NHL 14 be a GM in free agency. Watched him, and I was like, hold up. This guy's massive and can skate super well. 19. Why have I never heard of him? I love this guy. I'm so happy you guys are asking about him. I think he's great. Now, in terms of, I'm happy you mentioned Spence. Here's the difference for me. Spence is a great puck mover. Like a really efficient puck mover, plays with a rush, generates chances. Grant's like next sort of step is like, first of all, you're right. They have the same even strength points. I think if I had to guess, because I'm looking at like the analytical percentiles, I don't know the raw figures because per 60 with these ones, but I think Helge has more goals than Spence, or no? Who would have more?
No, I think that's right. I think Helge's got 6 goals, I want to say.
Spence has got 3, I think.
Okay, so right. Yeah. So I'm not too far off. Anyways, Spence is a lot of his production is like puck moving, and there's been assists to that, whatever. Helge's been goals, which is great. The thing is, though, he has a good shot, but I don't know if it's like the blaster that will be kind of the PP1 focal point. So looking at the rest of his game, I think that, first of all, he's 19. Like where he's at now, he's great. Like I think he's got a really good thing. I think if he can continue to really get comfortable with just like defending one-on-one, having pretty good gap control, being a hard guy to play against like he is, I would go as far as say he'll be a top 4 defense in this league. Like, I think that just a matter of the poise he has with the puck. Like Spence is more of like a dessert. Like he's more of like taste by like fun to watch.
He's
whatever.
Spence is a power play player.
Yeah, whereas Helge isn't. And I think that if you really look at it, it's like, okay, first of all, the fact that he can carry the puck and find lanes on even strength the way he can, it's really impressive. Yeah. And one last thing I'll give you. Sorry, I'm rambling, but and this is not a comparison at all of the player. This is not a situation that's applicable. When Mortis Seider was drafted, I feel like people were kind of like, okay, big dude, skates kind of well, whatever. And they kind of like, they have that look where it's like, it almost like seems effortless when they're out there and like almost like they're not trying, but they are because they're bigger.
Yep.
I see that with Helge, like where it's like things he does is just like crazy. And it's like, you realize he's 19 and like the curve and like where he's going up, like you've really tapped into sort of a, not a boom or bust guy, but a guy that will be an NHL player. And if things go right from continually, this guy could be like a top 4 guy. I firmly believe that.
He's probably my favorite defenseman of the entire bunch here. So, and that's
he's great.
Not counting, I guess, Brant Clark so far, because I haven't had a chance to see him. He just was drafted, yada yada. But what Helge does, like he scored a goal over the weekend. We talked about it in the last show, Randon and I did. He is outstanding in the offensive zone at finding seams and when to into those seams to make those plays. And it's really, really, it's a level of confidence that because keep in mind, I mean, Spence and Dursey were with him in Ontario early in the season. So he was able to be just kind of sheltered, if you will. And now these guys are gone. So he's RD1 at the moment. So as a 19-year-old in Ontario. So I've loved his game. And what I would ask, actually, if you're a busy guy, so I'm sure you don't have just time laying around, but I'd be curious to know your thoughts as you're watching a lot of video of him now. When he came up in the rookie camp last summer and he played with the Kings in the rookie camp, he looked very raw to me. And to see where he is today from where he was there, it's incredible his improvement and his development already at such a young age and just such a short time, frankly, too.
Yeah, like the thing I was gonna say is like if he was hypothetically like 22 or whatever, and like I'd look at him and be like, okay, well, like if this is what he's at now, I would think like this right now, I would still think like, okay, maybe in a year or two he could be a 6th or 7th guy. The fact he's 19 and has come a long ways he has, and he's continuing to progress, like what I would think is looking at him and also like kind of after watching him and look at the stats, like reading up on him a bit more, it's like at this rate, isn't he going to be in the NHL in 2 years? Like, I'm just saying, guys like him don't like players that are perform this way at 19 years old in North America at this age don't stay in the AHL for long. That's a fact. So,
what's good where the rubber's going to meet the road here is the Kings, as you know, we're kind of discussing this now, are loaded with right shot D prospects, right? There's 3 of them on this ticker here, not to mention Clark, and Faber. So something has to give, and this is where the conversation amongst Kings fans is, well, this is probably where your big trade is going to happen. One or two of these big time right shot D prospects is going to go, and I'm like, just don't be Grons because
Vancouver wanted him too, though. Like that's what I mean. See,
sure
like I
did.
Great. Someone's gonna tweet now. Like Jacob Stoller said that Grant is gonna be the next Morris Sider. I'm gonna get absolutely teed up on Twitter. Like I thought Kings sounds pretty good.
Well, you wouldn't be the only one. So I was gonna bring it up that I listened to a podcast. It was a NHL draft podcast. They had two Swedish guys talking about him in his draft year, and one guy said, "I love this guy so much. I think at the pinnacle of his game, he could be as good, if not better, than Rasmus Dahlin. I would call him Rasmus Dahlin light." And so, like, that was at the pinnacle of his game. And I know that was a lavish statement by the said scout, but he's progressed faster than any right shot D that I've seen from the team. And you know, and now Rasmus Dahlin isn't really like playing at the number 1 overall pick level.
Watch your mouth. I still love Rasmus Dahlin.
His career isn't over yet either. But I'm just saying, like,
have you checked that Dahlin is doing pretty well recently?
Recently, he's on fire.
I just like to bust Joe's chops because he's in Buffalo. So
I love
Buffalo.
I'm in Rochester. I'm in Rochester, and I love Dahlin.
Yeah, like at least I'd rather say that he's like Sider than Dahlin because like at least they look a bit similar. Like
I don't see the Dahlin comp, to be honest.
I think that's ludicrous. Like I don't understand it.
I think they're different, but I guess all things said, like it's an exciting player, and I think the common thing is everybody says, okay, well, in terms of right shot D, Clark is untouchable, and everybody else is on the table, and I would just like to say, let's try not to trade Grants if we can. Like,
but
listen,
that's what I meant. The fact that Vancouver at 1.2 was saying Grants was one of the guys I wanted as well was really interesting to me as well.
Let me ask you this, just out of curiosity, because when it comes to for Connor, and obviously it's all hypothetical right now, the deadline's over. I would not trade, and I guess maybe it's in a vacuum, not necessarily to the Kings specific situation, because I don't know that Connor Garland's a great fit for them anyways, but throw that out the window for a second. I would not trade Grans for Connor Garland. I would trade Alex Turcotte for Connor Garland. How does that land? And do you think that says kind of a lot about the two prospects and where they sit in at least my mind?
I think you're probably right. I think that like the tough part is when you say that, my immediate reaction is like, oof. Like I guess at the end of it, Turcotte would have been traded for Connor Garland. And that kind of stings. But again, I'm the guy that came on this podcast and said sell high. So that's a pretty good deal. I'd agree with you. I'd probably, okay, you got Byfield, Deneau. Who's the 3C again? That's really good.
Well, Kopitar is still there too. Let's not forget. Let's not get him out yet.
I deserve to get teed up for that. See? Oh my God. Yeah, guys, I don't even watch.
He's from a small town in Europe.
I have an airport. We don't even have an airport. I just watched the Moose. So you got 3 centers that are like, we're gonna be there for the next foreseeable future. I have like a lot of people have faith in their ability to have the Kings have a lot of forwards that are able to play center too, like versatile. So not much room for him there, Turcotte. Defenseman, you know, just in general, like that's a stockpile. That's a currency you don't want to get rid of. Mm-hmm. I think of the 3 guys that we have listed here, you know, Grant, Spence, and Jersey. I think Grant is a higher upside. And with that said, why would you move him? Like, I like Jersey. I was like when he was with the Marlies briefly at the camps, where I interviewed him, and so kept track of him as you know he was having that good year in was it Owen Sound or wherever or Guelph. Clearly not too much because I can't remember where he played, but he's progressing really well in the NHL this year. He's been shown to be really good. Like it was a very sound return in the Muzzin deal. He's a legitimate prospect, whatnot. Spence, lovely, plays, really fun, whatnot. But at the end of the day, like those guys are Spence and Jersey are not locks to be top 4 guys. I don't think they're locks. Maybe they will be. Jersey definitely, I think, will be in someone's top 4 or 5, like for sure. In his career, Spence, I think, can be, but we'll see if he rounds everything out. Grant, at the way he's progressing, has the potential to be a lock at that. And you've got more team control there. He's young. You have him now. See what you've got. So I agree. I would not move him. Like, I would rather move Turcotte.
Yeah. So LTR Regulate comes in here and says, "Hey boys, all-timer Kings fan, regular season ticket holder with the Reign until the pandemic. I like Grons, nice upside, but still a project on defense. Gaps need work. Still good potential. I say he's still 2 years out.
Could be. That's
be
okay. He's 19.
That's my point. Yeah, like there you go. Like, he's 2 years out. He has 2 more years, and then he's 21. Like, that's great.
Right. Well, I want to say I've got one more that I want for you. I really appreciate we've taken a lot of your time, and I really do appreciate it. It's been awesome, by the way. So you're somebody who is covered the Winnipeg Jets organization, obviously, in Manitoba. I would be curious. The Kings just acquired a defenseman from Manitoba for the Ontario Reign, right shot D Nelson Nogier. What can Reign fans expect to see from him? He's more of a defensive defenseman with a bit of a physical streak to his game, is my lay understanding. But what can we expect from him?
Noge is criminally underrated by proxy of the fact that he was the odd man out of the best defense corps in the AHL. So the Jets organization, I know for a fact, they value getting shots on net from the point. That's a whole kind of faded out in the league wide. But anyways, it's something that they admire. Noge from like Nelson Nogier, and I'll be full disclosure, God disclose this. As a person, I love him. Every single one of his Manitoba Moose teammates retweet the video of him leaving. This guy is salt of the earth. Also likes the player cards. He took a second to tell me that after a presser. Big fan of them. So I
like him already.
There. Yeah, he loves player cards. Noge is great. Now, he's criminally underrated because of this sense. Because he was on an ELC for as long as he was, and the fact that he got into an NHL game, let's call a spade a spade. Nelson Nogier is not an NHL asset. I think he even knows that. He was not great at the NHL level, and he's not, an amazing skater. But what I said about the shots on net, he took his game and knowing what the organization wanted, and he really developed a knack for getting pucks on net. The guy's averaging, you guys can look it up. All I know is he's in the 100th percentile of shots on goal per 60, and that he's got a large sample size of it. He gets pucks on net from the point, and he can absolutely lay a guy out. He's a great guy in that sense. He creates a lot from that point area. Now, does Ontario shoot as high from the point? Probably not. I'm sure a lot of teams don't. The fact that he can very well do that is great to have in a bottom pairing type defenseman. I think, listen, if the card, like, this guy just wanted a chance in left Manitoba. He wasn't even in the lineup that often. And the fact he was such a good soldier, like, for as long as he was, I don't understand how, frankly. It takes a good person. So, again, I don't know what he's walking into with Ontario in terms of, like, you guys have a lot of good defensemen, so I suspect it won't be a cakewalk in that sense either. With that said, like, quality insurance you can kind of get at that position, and I think there's no one doubting that he could play every game in the AHL and be good, right? We're talking about two teams. I made a swap of guys that, like, I have who's this new guy? You guys have to tell me about the guy that Manitoba got back. I know nothing about him. You guys are putting him on the spot here.
That was Marcus Phillips?
Yeah, I know. He's another guy I thought was made up.
So Marcus Phillips was a 4th-round pick for us. He
Yeah.
actually made the Canadian World Junior team. He was the only non-first-round pick to make the team, I think, that year.
What year? Let me write this down. I haven't done any research. Sorry.
And so he made the roster. He was a purely offensive defenseman, and Team Canada said, "Hey, we need you to round out your game." He did. He's a great guy, and I think he's just got buried in the Kings prospect pool and needed an exchange of scenery there. And so, but he is a quality left shot. I think he could probably play with his skill level right now, a 6'7" tweener with probably an AHL lifer type guy.
Right.
But if you needed to, you could bring him up. But he's like, we're talking about players that getting jumped. He got jumped by Mervari. He got jumped by Tobias Bjornfoot and all these guys.
Right.
And so now he's in that dead zone. But I think he's still capable enough of playing NHL minutes.
Really? Wow.
As a 6th or 7th, in my opinion.
Like today or like in a bit? Like now?
In a pinch, like if you had an injury type guy, I wouldn't say he's a perennial NHLer, but I would feel comfortable with him playing. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy. So I guess these two teams swapped like pretty good AHL defensemen that are just kind of being
yes. Yes, and
Yeah.
it was probably like we talked about it on our show earlier in the week that the rain, especially with some of the call ups with Spence, Dursey, Austin Strand up in Los Angeles, like they needed right shot D, so
right.
Nogier fills that need, and they had a few left shot D that so Phillips, who has a little bit more offense to his game, I would say in the style of play than from the sounds of it that Nogier does, but. I would say it would probably take a serious pinch if he was to the NHL team would be needing him, but a solid, if unspectacular, AHL left shot D man.
Right. Wow. I'm gonna look into him tonight. That's my new look into for sure.
Well, thank you, Jacob. I really appreciate it. We took an hour of your time. I really appreciate you coming on. You can find him, all your listeners, at JL Stoller. That's STOLLER on Twitter, coming out with all these player cards. Joe and I will obviously retweet all those cards. We retweet all the cards if they are about the Reign or the Kings players there. And for LTR in the comments, we'll be getting to Taylor Ward next week with Joe and I after he gets a couple games under his belt. So don't miss that broadcast. Thank you for coming on. As always, you can find all the articles for Hockey Royalty at hockeyroyalty.com. Thank you for our sponsor, DraftKings, and our very special guest, Jacob. Pleasure having you on today, my man.
Thank you guys for having me. Anytime. Let's do this again. You guys are awesome. I'll put the Turcotte card out, and hey, maybe if we don't get into a podcast soon, I'm sure the Reign and Moose might see each other in the conference finals. I wouldn't put it past that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, for
Thanks
sure.
again.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Cheers, guys.